Mhm. All right, here we are. Welcome, everyone. Hi, folks, joining in. Welcome to today's virtual tour of intentional communities. So glad to have you here with us. Greetings. Welcome, Gigi, Ariel. Beautiful. Some familiar faces and a lot of new folks as well. Great. Well, we'll have more folks joining in, but I'll start things off by welcoming you all and introducing myself. My name is Cynthia. I'll be the host for our virtual tour today. I live myself in an intentional community in Vermont, so very different than our presenting community today that's based in Costa Rica. But I'm enjoying summertime here and getting to support a lot of people who are right now visiting communities or preparing for their winter visits to intentional communities. So thank you all so much for making the time to be here today. Alrighty, so I will get started with our intro presentation. Okay. Here we go. So hopefully you can see my screen nice and full. Once again, welcome to today's virtual tour of intentional communities. Today we are exploring the community of Holos based in Costa Rica. And we have Ian Michael, who is the founder of Holos, here to talk to us today about the project. I'm really excited because this is a community I got to visit a few years ago as part of our Ecovillage tours. And I'm very curious to hear the updates from Ian on how things are going there in Costa Rica. Alrighty, so this is an event that we're hosting on Zoom as well as live streaming. So hi everyone who's watching the live stream of this. It will be available to watch afterwards on YouTube. For those in the live audience here with us in Zoom, I really want to encourage you to use the chat feature. Use this as an opportunity to connect with Ian, learn about Holos, but also to connect with each other. So if you wouldn't mind finding the chat box now and putting in a short introduction about yourself. Where do you live? Do you live in an intentional community already? Please let us know which one. And what do you hope to learn or get out of today's session? Okay, so find the little chat box and type in a message. I know we have people joining in from all over the world, which is really exciting. How many people are interested in Holos? Great. Okay. Beautiful. Rotterdam, Dorchester. Wow. We are Dutch and live in Spain, hoping to find an intentional community. Of course, Ian is there in Alaska right now. Nice. Cool. All right. Well, go ahead, keep putting in your introductions, and I'm going to share a few other announcements with you before we jump into the full presentation. So first off, as you may know, this event is put on in partnership with the Foundation for Intentional Community, which is a wonderful nonprofit organization. They've been supporting the movement of communities for decades, and run events like this and a bookstore and an online directory and a ton of other stuff, often by donation or free of charge. So if you're ever looking for a place to contribute, FIC is a very worthwhile nonprofit organization to support. And on the FIC's YouTube channel, that's where you can see all of our past virtual tours going back 3 years. So it's a really great resource for learning more about intentional communities. And this event is put on with my organization called CommunityFinders. Many of the people watching today are part of our CommunityFinders Circle, members in our program. And if you'd like to come join us and get help on your community journey, to find a community to join or to start one, you're welcome to join us at communityfinders.com. And I also want to mention today Ecovillage Tours, which is my other big project, ecovillagetours.com, and we offer trips around the world to visit communities. Like you're all joining today a virtual tour. How cool would it be to travel with a small group and do this in person, visiting multiple communities during a week or 2 week long journey? And we have trips coming up all around the world. Lots of ones coming up in Europe and Southeast Asia. I especially want to highlight, though, our 4 Costa Rica eco-village tours that are happening starting 2026. So we have one tour in January, February, March, and April. And it's very cool that there are so many intentional communities in Costa Rica that each of these 4 trips visits all different communities. So Holos is going to be on our February trip. That'll be an 11-day long trip, February 5th to the 15th. And you'll get to visit Holos as well as many other communities, I think 5 or so, within the more southern region of Costa Rica. So yeah, it'll be really cool not only to come and like see Ian and meet him in person and check out what's happening there on the ground in Holos, but also to see other communities in the area. And if you want to learn more about that, you're welcome to check out ecovillagetours.com/Costa-Rica. And yeah, we have spaces on this trip. Our January trip is getting full, but our February trip still has some spaces if you'd like to join. Alrighty, last little logistical thing. I want to share with you that our next virtual tour is going to happen on Thursday, August 28th, but not at the usual time. Usually we do this at 2 p.m. Eastern. Instead, it's going to be at 6 p.m. Eastern. So I believe that would be 4 hours later than we normally start. And that is because we are having Afterly Eco Village join us for that event, and they are based in Australia. So it'll actually be the next day in the morning for them. So we've made it work out to have our event at 6 p.m. Eastern so that they can join. And we get to hear from a community in the land down under there in Australia. This is a newer community that's just getting started, but they have a lot of momentum and a lot of opportunities for new members to join. All right, I think that's all my announcements. So let's prepare to give our full attention to Ian Michael. If you could remove any distractions, maybe have something to drink nearby, definitely a notebook handy. We will have time for Q&A at the end. So Ian's going to give us a presentation for about 20 minutes, and then we'll have lots of time to answer your questions. So make sure that you either write your question down in your notebook or drop it into the chat box, and I'll be monitoring that and making sure that we get to as many questions as possible. Alrighty, so I'm going to stop my screen share now and give a big warm welcome to Ian Michael, who is, I think, on a family trip in Alaska, so not in Costa Rica right now, but has made some time to be with us today to share. So thank you so much, Ian Michael. Looking forward to your talk here.
Thank you so much. I'm really grateful for what you guys are doing with CommunityFinders and the Eco Village tours, and that you've come down to see the land, because ultimately that helps you understand the depth of what we're doing and all the different dimensions. And I'll try to do my best to share as many of those today in 20 minutes. And also great for all of you for joining. And I hope that you learned something from the presentation today, if not just about our community, but about the journey of what it is to build a community and to live in a community. So I think I'll start with a really quick little story time, which is, I'm here in Alaska in Denali Park. And when I was 17, I was living here and decided to become a vegetarian. And vegetarianism is not really that popular in Alaska. I grew up hunting and living off the land, but I had all of these back to the land values from my parents. And so I really wanted to live in a sustainable way on the earth, but it wasn't making a lot of sense as a vegetarian in Alaska. So when I was 18, after I graduated high school, I hitchhiked from Alaska to Mexico. And that kind of started the journey where I was aiming to get to Belize or Costa Rica and learn about farming there, but I only made it like halfway through Mexico, had a really powerful spiritual experience behind a waterfall, and kind of felt complete on that stage of the journey. But then 20 years later, after kids and careers and building things, and I wrote a degree in eco resort design and development, and then I did a master's in psychology. After I completed all those life chapters, this dream of living in Costa Rica kind of popped back up. And so I was approached by a man named Stan Groff. Stan Groff is a psychiatrist from the Czech Republic. He started something called holotropic breathwork. And so the word holos means wholeness, and it's kind of an honoring of his legacy. So a lot of the people that are drawn to our community are interested in psychology and wellness and transpersonal kind of phenomena. So I married his vision with my original desire to live in Costa Rica and to farm and live as much off the land as possible. And one of the um, big reasons that I did this or pursued this life was because I saw when I was young, growing up in Alaska, I could kind of look down at the earth and have these really quiet, still winters and look at the patterns of human civilization and realize that we are headed towards a cliff of, an unsustainable ways of living that are really extracting from the planet. And also with other global phenomena, food supplies at different times can be impacted by climate change and all these different pieces. So I was looking at the instability of human civilization, and the best solution that I could come up with is to start small and really like live as much in harmony with the earth as possible. So yeah, that kind of brings us to today. And we have started this community in Costa Rica in the Diamanté Valley, which is called Holos. And this photo helps you get a little bit oriented to the landscape. This was the land in 2021 when we first bought the property. I had been scouting from 2018, 2019, and I knew about this land. And I moved there during the pandemic in 2020 and lived in a little cabin. There were three previous owners that had 120 acres, and they were going to build a yoga center, and I was going to help them do that. But after the pandemic, they decided they wanted to sell the land. So I found investors to buy the 120 acres and then also another couple farms next door. So we ended up with cumulatively 200 acres to work with for our master plan. And this is the initial putting in of the roads in 2021. So you can see all of this light green in the middle. That's cattle farming and what it does to the ecosystem in Costa Rica. So a lot of Costa Rica was deforested in the 70s and prior. And then they put into place some laws around reforestation and protection of waterways and all of these laws that actually made Costa Rica a global success story for reforestation and biodiversity. So we wanted to continue that movement, and this hillside looks completely different in today's world. There's a couple houses in here, but also the forest has grown up significantly in the last 4 years. And so I'm really proud of what we've done in terms of ecosystem restoration. But you can see the initial cut for the road. This was just a cattle road before. And I'll get into the little presentation about what we've created since then. I'm going to skip some slides because this is a longer presentation, but the valley that we live in, the Diamante, is really known for its waterfalls. And I developed a waterfall fetish during my hitchhiking days when I was 18. I had this really powerful experience sitting behind a waterfall in Mexico near Puerto Vallarta, and I started singing. And the vibration of the singing started to create this field of energy, and it really transformed my consciousness in a unique way. So I had this desire to find a place with waterfalls. So when I looked all around Costa Rica, I ended up landing in this valley, and this is the tallest waterfall in Costa Rica. It's called the Diamante, and this river flows down along our property. So a lot of the property looks out at this waterfall, and then the river flows down to where we are. Our basic philosophy is coming home to yourself and coming home to understanding our place in the larger ecosystems of the earth. And so it's really a vision that spans not just Costa Rica, but what is it possible in other places to live those basic principles of coming back home to yourself and coming back home to a place in community, and then also coming back home to our understanding of where we fit in the larger ecosystems that we inhabit. So the longer term vision is the collective realization of our innate wholeness. So recognizing that we are already complete, that we have these beautiful human bodies, and that we're part of a whole, that there's like a wholeness of the earth, there's a wholeness of the cosmos, and we are just one piece of that. And the way that we help people in the realization of that is by stewarding land in a good way and stewarding the health and well-being of individuals. These are our pillars and values. Our pillars are nature, stewardship, technology, culture, food as medicine, community, practices, and healing. And then the values that we work on embodying are exploration, connection, well-being, integrity, education, reciprocity, and that all leads to wholeness. And this presentation is also available on our website. When you go there, holos.global, you can find lots of information about the structure of the community and what we're building. So I was sharing a little bit about the location. Are you guys able to see my slides? Michelle was having a hard time. Yeah, it looks like I've got some heads nodding, so perfect.
Sorry.
So I talked about the location. This is looking out at the 600-foot waterfall, the Diamante. It's hard to capture in a photo how epically beautiful this place is, but it's situated down in what they call the southern zone. So from San Jose, it's about 3.5 hours to drive, or about 30 minutes from the second biggest city in Costa Rica, San Ysidro. And um, zooming in a little bit further, this is the region that we live in. We're about 30 minutes from the coast, from Dominical or Uvita, which are kind of well-known beach towns, still very Costa Rican, but there's more and more of an expat community in this region. Where we are in the Diamanté Valley, it's a pretty beautiful mix of people with a lot of idealism and then traditional Costa Rican farmers. And I feel like we're integrating in a really peaceful way. There's always like things to learn in terms of differences of culture and then also like sharing what we have to offer. So it's been a really beautiful place to call home for the last 5 years. And it's located in this kind of perfect um, temperate zone for me, which is not too hot down by the ocean. It's much more hot and humid. And then if you get higher up in the mountains, it's cooler. And I kind of like this mix where you still feel like you're in the rainforest. And so this is where we've landed. So this is a little bit of kind of a picture of what we've developed. We have a community zone here, which is kind of at the center of the property. We've got a co-working station, a permaculture farm, fruit forests, a recycling center, workshops. There's now a playground that one of the residents donated. So we have kids from the local community play there as well as in the Holos community. We have a community sun temple, which is a big dome that we do, different kinds of body, like exercise and that kind of thing, and different kinds of gatherings. And then next to it is our co-working and volunteer program. So we have service guests that come from like 1 month to 3 months, and they come work on the land, and then they have a kitchen and it's located in an area that is called a trapiche, where they crush sugarcane utilizing two bulls that walk around in a circle. And there's a piece of technology that you can feed sugarcane into. So this is kind of our farm and community center. And then there's houses now dotted all over that area. And there's a few that have gotten started down in this region, which is kind of the east side of the property and the Diosa neighborhood. Um, and that starts a big trail network to all of our waterfalls, and I'll show a little bit of that at the end of the presentation. And then another big piece of the puzzle of what we built, there's four main components. There's the community, there's the cultivation, which is regenerative agriculture. There's the conservation zone, which is where all the waterfalls are. And then there's what we call like a place of care. And that place of care is what we call Diamanté Base Camp. And that's a retreat center that does a lot of different kinds of retreats and events and where a lot of people gather. So that's up here on the top of the hill. And then as I shared, there's these waterfalls. We have about 2 kilometers of river, and it starts with La Diosa, which was something that was named by the local people, the goddess pool. And then we created access points to all of these other waterfalls and consulted with the indigenous folks that work with us and farm with us and came up with what the names were of these waterfalls. So this is kind of a pictorial description of what we're up to. And then this shows, whoops, a little bit more of the overview. A lot has changed. There's more houses in here now in the last year and a half, but this gives you a sense of the upper zone there of the picture is the Diamante River. That's a big conservation parcel that everybody shares. And then there's about 40 house sites dotted up the hillside. And the community center is here on 43 and the retreat center up here on 42. So we developed like 3 or 4 kilometers or a couple miles of roads, power lines, water system, and fiber optic internet. So that everybody can, live somewhat of the life that they have been used to in other places in the world, but also be really deeply connected to nature. This talks a little bit about the building process. This is the community zone prior to the infrastructure that we put in. We've got some big greenhouses there, um, and this is all available on the website. So you're welcome to come to one of our virtual village gatherings or come down to the property. But you can get a lot more information about visiting on the website. This is one of our glamping tents, which is at the retreat center. This is the retreat center. It's got 15 tents with 25 beds, a welcome center that we just improved, a kitchen, and then some really beautiful structures that we built out of bamboo and a fire pit. This is overview of the retreat center. It's got these big views of the Diamante, and you can see it's kind of perched up on this knoll. And to the south in this valley over here is the Baru River, which is famous for Nyaka waterfall. It's one of the most epic waterfalls in Costa Rica. And then we have the Diamante over here on the north side of the property. So we're kind of hugged by all this water and all of these waterfalls, but we're up on this ridge in the center of this massive valley and farming region. And so I shared with you kind of the origin story of me falling in love with waterfalls. So that's what I was really looking for this community. And you can see La Curandera is the waterfall down here at the bottom. La Reina, this is actually really during the dry season right now. The waterfall fills up like 30 feet wide of this area because it's been a little bit more the rainy season. This is Las Niñas. It's a really playful area for kids and anybody, but this is La Madre, Las Animas. It's about 100-foot waterfall, and you can rappel down it and go into a canyon, and then it's just a massive playground. And then here you can see Diosa. This is the goddess pool, Diosa. And this is a little more information about governance and building and all of kind of the nuts and bolts. And then if you had information or if you had interest, you could get a lot more information on the website. But I'm going to zoom back to the map and just talk a little bit more about kind of the thought process behind all of what we've been doing. So I think community really gravitates around central ideas, and I think it's really important to create those gravitational points that people interact in a really natural way. So instead of imposing a structure of like, here's the way that we're going to do things and here's how we're going to connect, we have some of that. We do, like movie nights and potlucks and, birthday parties and farm events, and we do all of those things. But what I wanted to create was something where there's just these spontaneous opportunities for people to interact based around what their values are and what they care about. So all the waterfalls are one of the biggest draws. I would say that everybody in the community is really drawn to nature and the biodiversity of this region. I've seen jaguars in this area, or I've seen a jaguar in this area, and there's just all kinds of really amazing flora and fauna. So I would say that that's the primary driver is people's interest in nature. And then the secondary is probably the retreat center. So people that are involved in healing arts and transformation or in some way really care about, that aspect. And then the third part is the farm. So what we have is a share structure where everybody has a share based on how many lots they have or how big their lot is. And everybody pays an HOA fee, a homeowners association fee that feeds in to take care of everything. And the largest cost center for the community is the regenerative agriculture. So we planted 6,000 trees in the last couple of years. Some of those reforestation, some of those fruit trees. Then we have a couple massive greenhouses, and that all produces food that is harvested every week. And then people come down and pick up either their basket or their farm goods. And we have a big chicken palace. So we have a lot of eggs and duck eggs and all of that. So the fee that everybody pays each month goes to the regenerative agriculture, the trail maintenance, the road maintenance, which is significant down there when we can get 6 inches of rain in a day during the rainy season, or we call it the green season. And then recycling and that kind of thing. So we have a lot of different pieces that the homeowners association fee goes into. And up to this point, Holos, myself, and the managers have been the ones to administer the HOA and the fee. But the intention has always been to turn over governance to the community once it gets to a certain critical mass. So we have 8 houses built now on a total of 40 available lots. I think there's 7 lots that are left. So things are moving, and there's a couple more houses in design and one in construction right now. So that shares a little bit about this land and why it draws particular people. We have this massive spring down here too, La Naciente Madre. We have a sweat lodge there. So some people organize sweat lodges in the community, and that's a really beautiful place to gather as well. So yeah, I think that covers, the majority of what we're doing. And then I just wanted to mention we also have the intention of building more Holos sites. So there has been a lot of enthusiasm for building a Holos in British Columbia, and we have a parcel picked out, and we're doing the due diligence on the zoning and all of the, making sure that it's possible to do what we want to do. One of the things that I've learned from developing in Costa Rica, I've done development projects in Alaska and California and elsewhere, and consulted on projects around the world. But Costa Rica has its very own unique challenges in terms of bureaucracy and the way that things move. The national motto is Pura Vida, and Pura Vida means pure life. And you can say Pura Vida for hello, or how like I'm doing, how you doing, Pura Vida. But Pura Vida also means like chill out. And everybody kind of moves at a certain pace. And the government bureaucracies definitely move at a pace where it's like, no matter how hard you push, they're not going to move faster than they're comfortable. And so I've learned a lot about, development in another country or in Costa Rica through this process. And as we look at other sites, which BC is our first choice, we're also looking in Colorado. There's a lot of momentum and enthusiasm there. There's some folks that want to start a Holos in Portugal. So the idea is that we're trying to build a playbook for how to do this and then support others and bring in investors that really like want to have their hand held in building another center. And then we would participate in one way or another, helping to do the administration of the build out. So yeah, as we look in British Columbia, that's one of the biggest things I'm looking at is how do I make my life easier and not take on too much stress of the complexities of building a community like this. And, there's a lot of different ownership structures that are possible depending on the jurisdiction that you're in. So, like in British Columbia, there's ways that you can build communities with common infrastructure. In Costa Rica, the way that we did it was we created all these individual parcels, but then we have a number of parcels like the conservation area or the community area that everybody has an easement on top of. So nobody from the community has to worry about the taxes or fractional ownership or any of that. But with their parcel comes total access to all of these other amenities. So that's the legal structure we came up with for this particular community because it was the easiest to do. But we also are very curious about how to structure these differently. Um, so just a couple things that came out of the chat that I want to mention before we go into question and answers. So um, the lots cost between we've had lots as low as 50, 60,000 at the very beginning and up to 650,000 for some of the biggest view lots. People are building single family homes. Some people are building homes that they share with friends. So it's really like whatever is allowed in the zoning. We review the designs and then support people in their builds. So some builds like down here, there's a family that has 5 kids, and then mom built a little cottage next door, and they kind of have their own little their corner and their little micro community within the larger community. Um, and I do live here. My house is on 21. That's my primary residence. I'm slowly trying to build a larger house and get more of my family to come down. So I'm super committed to this land, like for the rest of my life. If I had to choose one place to live on Earth, it would definitely be here. But I also was a professional snowboard coach, and there's not a lot of snowboarding in Costa Rica. And so I have this larger dream for my own life, to live in British Columbia part of the year and be able to snowboard. We have really two primary seasons in Costa Rica. One is drier, which is from January through May. And then it's a bit wetter from June through August, and then it gets more rain September through November. I've come to really appreciate the rainy season. It's a little cooler, there's less tourism, and it's just a really sweet time of year. Everything is really lush. So the dry season, when all the tourists come January through May, is a good time for me to take off and go snowboarding for a little while. So that's my ultimate life dream. I'm kind of like slowly moving towards that. But I'm really committed to this land, and I think that that's what it takes. It takes people that are really willing to go there for the long-term stewardship and integrate into the culture, both the microcosmic culture of the community you live in, but also the larger culture of the region that you're in. So I've learned a lot through just really rooting in. Um, there was a question about collective income streams, and so a lot of people have their own income from remote work or are independently wealthy, but we really try to support people in whatever their endeavors are through the retreat center. And a number of our residents work for Holos and support the retreats, and then we have our whole indigenous and local crew that we've brought a lot of indigenous people back to this region. This used to be a region of the Baruka people, and they pretty much there was no Baruka living in the valley when I got there. So we started to employ them, and they came from a smaller village, and most of them stayed and wanted to be part of the community. So we've got some long-term residents that are indigenous people. Um, the
Ian, let's do the rest of the Q&A as a
Sure,
group, you know.
that sounds
Yeah,
good.
that's yeah, thank you. Thank you though so much for this presentation. You really shared a lot of information and the photos are gorgeous. Like you say, they don't quite do it justice, but it gives people a sense for the land there and everything
Yeah,
you've been building. It's really tremendous. Yeah.
thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, thanks
Yeah.
for everybody for tuning in.